Beep boom boop. Beep boom boop. Beep boom. Hello. If you are full of turkey and iron brew, please sit down and be comfortable. If you are not full of turkey and iron brew, the question is, why aren't you? Is it because you prefer something other than turkey? Then why are you not full of that? If it's because you prefer something other than iron brew, then obviously you haven't drunk iron brew. So go drink some of that. Hello everyone and welcome to, and I say this with sincerity, welcome to Bruships, a special questions what if till the brew runs out, which is going to be in exactly 2.5 hours because I'm on a deadline imposed by family because it is Boxing Day and is technically a family day. So I'm doing this all from here and then I'm going to say hello. Yes, I do have a little tree behind me for you, but that's mainly because I have all the Christmas lights for me in front of you, behind you. So I can see all the Christmas lights because it's nice for me to look at. It does like to wind me up a lot. So I'm going to ignore that for a second. That would not surprise me. Diddle it. And I'm back. Well, I have no idea. Woohoo! Is it working? I think so. Woohoo! It's working. And I'm taking very little notice of YouTube because YouTube is just lying to me now. So, hello, Jared there. Thank you for becoming a supporter. Let's quieten myself down. And hope everything carries on working. Hello, Anat Rajapal. Hello, Sean V. Hello, Tanya Velka. Hello, Shumi. Hello, DG40. Hello, M35 Benvids. Hello, Carl Hardman. Hello. Please don't let me drink a full bottle of amaretto and lemonade. I need you to keep me away from my weakness. Drink iron brew instead. Gone Cameron. I'm full of port and garlic mussels. That could both be a very good thing or a very bad thing. Hello, Seneca. Happy Boxing Day to you. Thomas Howarth. Hello to Austria. Hello, Team Locker. Hopefully you've stopped buffering. Hello, Night Secretary everyone. 5 minutes earlier start. Yeah, well, I got the internet working and everything seemed to be fine, and so we went with it. Colin Cameron, looks like the doc did not win his argument on the internet. Well, hopefully it's being won now. Hopefully, he says. Circle of Doom, hopefully got away. BT is being annoying. Yep. Hello, Colin Cameron. Hello, Anna Ojapol. Hello, Sean V. Hello, Carl Harmon. Hello, Carmen Gasberg. Sankaniro, Mama Clarke started streaming a 4K video to punish her son. Don't joke. She has more Netflix memberships than I want to think about. I do need to talk to the machine spirits of BT Internet. I also need to talk to the machine spirits of pretty much every single electronic system in this house, I think. I think I'm going to have to upgrade pretty much every component at some point. They were all bought last year and supposed to be enough, and they all seem to be dying. Nighty Clone, where was the Supermarine Woolworths wooden version used? I think they tried to test it in the North Atlantic. I'm not sure it was that really good for that one. There are a few other places where the wooden version gets used, but I think they go for the more fabricy aluminium version, especially once they get to the Far East and later war. Hello, Stafford Thompson. Hello, thank you, Joe. All right. Seneca, what if the naval treaties had 2 additional categories, armored cruiser and frigate? How do you define the limitations for these categories? Well, if they had frigates, then that means a frigate's been invented at some point. So I presume a frigate would be a high-speed anti-submarine warfare escort. So it'd probably be something limited to the tonnage weight of a destroyer. Maybe limited to smaller guns than a destroyer, but not allowed torpedoes, but able to use depth charges and those sort of things. But basically, they had that. It was called a sloop, and it was allowed to be produced as much. So they wanted just nothing below 20 knots. As for armored cruiser would probably be 15,000 tons. That would probably be the limit they would set it at, and that would cause an interesting thing because let's make sure I'm using the Bruships mug. Yes, this is the Bruships mug. Those wondering, I have now got two mugs. I have my Alexander's Iron Brew mug, and I have Bruships mug, which is Alex's Bruships mug. Mm-hmm. My family seem to have decided that tankards for Alex are a good thing for Christmas. Anyway, armored cruiser would be an interesting one because suddenly, if you have a 15,000 ton limit on an armored cruiser, or alternatively, they go 6,000 ton limit for light cruisers, and 12,000 tons for heavy cruisers, and 18,000 tons for armored cruisers. And if you are wondering, yes, I am marrying the bottles of Iron Brew. Because, yes, I do have more than one open. This was the remains of the bottle on Christmas Day. This was the the bottle 3 on Christmas Day, bottle 2 from today. Yes, I might have a small problem, but we will deal that in the new year. If I make it through to the new year. But honestly, the frigate one won't have much of an impact in the 1920s and 30s. It might have a frigate impact on the build-up for World War II. Especially if the Royal Navy can churn out some fast anti-submarine warfare things, frigates, and start saying, these are what we can have available. That would be the one difference. If they're, you see, the difference between sloops is because you can build as many as you like, the government doesn't feel they have to build any. But if there's actually an agreed upon number of frigates, let's say you're allowed the same number as you are destroyers, then if the government turns around and goes, well, we don't feel like building them, the Navy goes, oh, but then you're not keeping up to our treaty commitments. And the Treasury goes, we hate you. And the Navy goes, we know, but it works. Conversely, the nation most affected by that would have been Germany, because their main advantage in beginning of World War II was that the British were short on escorts at the beginning of World War II. Didn't have enough. If the Royal Navy had been able to build match for match construction frigates and destroyers in the 1930s, then Germany would have probably lost a lot more submarines a lot more quickly, and they would have probably lost all their pre-war expertise in like the first couple of months. Hello, Michael Patton. Hello, that's good. Hello, Cody85. Hello, Grace Healthy. That's good. Oh no, it's Admiral BT up to its normal tricks. Mm-hmm. Arthur Thompson. Happy Boxing Day. It might have. I haven't seen it yet. I think that friend has been busy today. He was up rather late doing a long live, and my mum was watching him going, so this is what you're going to be doing tomorrow? Yes, Mum. Answering questions like he is. Yes, Mum. She's amazed at the concept of super chats. You're going, but he'd answer those questions without them. I know. I know, because he's a nice guy. Sure. Do you get super chats? I do occasionally get super chats. She's going, then she gets to the rest. She says, did I realize that you tend to answer my questions just because just for a polo? Yeah, I know, but you're my mum. You can get away with cheapskating me. Anyway, no, frigate equals battlecruiser. Ooh. If you have separate categories, if battlecruisers, instead of being called battlecruisers, are called frigates and are a separate category, then that becomes quite an interesting thing. Because probably you have a setting of, if you consider they go for 18 based on the size of the American battle fleet. If they are setting the size of frigates, they might be setting that according to the size of frigate force the Royal Navy has, because the Royal Navy has the frigates and they wouldn't want to lose them. So the Royal Navy has the 2 Renowns, the Hood, and the Tiger. So the Royal Navy has about 6 battle cruisers. And I think, honestly, that's probably what they push for. You'd probably end up with everyone being, with the US Navy and the Royal Navy being allowed 6 battle cruisers, 6 frigates, aka battle cruisers, and 18 battleships each. Which has a really big impact on World War II, because with the Japanese being allowed 7 temps, they're then allowed probably their they're the same number of battleships, but they're now allowed the 4 Congos they could keep, or they could go with 4 new battle cruisers if they want to build them, which probably changes the ships chosen as aircraft carriers for the Americans and the Japanese. Definitely, it might mean the American and Japanese have to decide to do new builds or convert battleships for both their carrier sets. So it could be the first generation of Montanas become the battleships. That probably slows down the pace of carrier movement, meaning carriers get linked more to the battle fleets for the other navies. The Royal Navy would have the fastest, not only the largest, but the fastest carrier force for a few years. And that could be scary. And that could have a big impact on World War II. A really big one. No need to apologise for being late. I started early. Thomas Howarth, what if B2 is replaced by Hood at Battle of Jutland? Would the British still lose 3 battle cruisers? Well, they might still lose 3 battle cruisers, but Jellicoe would be getting more information all the way through. Because Hood was an ardent communicator. So the point is, you would probably get the engagement happening, the main fleet action happening an hour or 2 hours earlier, which means you might well end up with a different scenario. The British might have been even better deployed than they were, because they were slightly off their mark in deployments. Based on no information, Jellicoe managed to call it correctly, but with actual information, he could have done some really nasty maneuvers on the Germans, including potentially splitting his fleet up and have it go both sides of them and have it enfilade, which was an option he'd considered. Basically, it's how long is a piece of string, because the effect on Jutland is going to be the communication level, which means it's going to change the engagements. Which means it's going to change the positions of the battle cruisers vis-a-vis the deployment of the forces. They're not going to be in the same positions they were. They're going to be able to be far better managed. If they're being far better managed, they might not be exposed to the same level of fire. They might be exposed differently. So you may or may not lose those ships. Those ships are still the weakest 3, but you may or may not lose them. That's again, since you've probably seen my comment earlier about Hood and Bismarck, thoughts on my assessment? Seemed a very sensible assessment. Basically, 96831 was pointing out that the loss of Hood for the Royal Navy was a problem. It was something they weren't happy about, but it didn't cause them any major losses. Whereas the loss of Bismarck from the German fleet was kind of crippling, because That was half their actual working ship strength at the time. And developer, if we're going to ram a ship into another, which two ships make the biggest bang? Pick any two liquefied natural gas carriers you want. It's an open secret that those things are basically mobile bombs. You have to be very, very careful and very, very protective of them. They are the nightmares for anyone in transit. I'm fairly sure I knew a gentleman once who he was in charge of security for a stretch of the Suez Canal, and I met him before he got the job, and I met him 6 months into the job, and by 6 months into the job, he'd gone completely grey, and he claimed that every single hair which had changed colour was because of an LNG carrier making a transit. Sir Johnson, the A-10s that are shipped over in 1990 hit a fog and arrived in 1940 and said, how did the Allies take advantage of the flying tanks? Bye-bye, Germans. Don't take this the wrong way, but if any air force in 1940 has A-10s, there is going to be no more ground support very quickly. We could actually probably keep A-10s running. Raphael, after your Mike incident, did the RNMS specialist have to worry that the good in the eyes would be appropriated for boarding actions? No. More a case of, it's like a lot of things. There are, if you're ever involved in these organizations, first thing you find out is certain things are illegal. Things are illegal. You can't buy a cloche now, I think, in the UK, and various other things. Knuckle dusters are something also which are looked at poorly, rather sensibly, but I am 100% certain, although I have never, of course, verified this, that anyone who needs them for government work will find a way to get access to them because they're useful. And this is why when I say that the gentlemen are going across at the Altmark incident, etc., were tooled up, they really were tooled up. I've found several descriptions in, and as you know, I always have a policy. What goes in the book, what went in here, was stuff I could verify in multiple sources. Not always good sources, but I could verify in multiple sources. The stuff that I can tell on here, I can say, well, it's got one source, or this is my strong suspicion, but I can't prove it, so I'm telling you about this because it's fun to talk about, but, it's fun. It's all fun. Audio fine, video laggy. Dang. Could the Royal Router, could a late war 4C survive the airstrike historically sunk 4C? 1945 spec for Renown, a 1945 spec KG3, a 1945 spec E-Class, and a 1945 spec J-Class. They'd certainly have had probably more likelihood of working radar, which would have made a difference. And hopefully, the big thing here is you need something to make everything work. And they have a lot of things go against them. So if the same circumstance happens, they might well end up in the same trouble. If they have the circumstance of all having working radars and all those working together, then things might well be different. Unnegligible. A limit of 100,000 tons on armored cruisers per nation. These are British with 8. The US with 7. Japan with 8. France with 6, possibly 8, and Italy with 5 old armored cruisers. If they can retain these and upgrade them similar to the 3,000 tons for capital ships, but not build new ones, how's that play out? That's more problematic. But knowing that they will probably be the thing that they can be replaced, and seeing as most of Britons were pre-World War One, the odds are they could probably replace them in the late 1920s, early 1930s. So what you should ask yourself is, what does 1928, and I would presume they give themselves 180,000 tons at least on armored cruisers per nation, because I reckon they'd be giving them 18,000 tons to do it. So it'd be 15 to 18,000 tons would be your building benchmark. So you might build 12, you might build 10. No, in the British, they build 12 of the 15,000 ton mark, and they just all magically do a county class with armor and go up to about 18,000 tons within about 5 minutes of war beginning. Just magically. Oh, what do you know? We have 4-inch thick plates of armor just sitting around in a warehouse. Oh, what do you know? It just appeared. Yeah, and it just perfectly slits the dimensions. Senator, your brokers have great read. Thank you. So Johnson, that means the boxes might have arrived. It's just that Mum's found the treats first. Darwin, you would now answer our question for an annual payment of £3 a year to all-time brew. Let's be honest, potentially. Go on, Cameron. Thank you. I will buy Mum a cup of tea. Hi, John Barrett. Hi, Paul from Chicago. Thank you for Yorkshire Gold. Rapper, I find the fact that your mother either doesn't know or doesn't want to know what you do in the shed out back for several hours a week amusing. It's fun times. Hello, George Newman. Hi, Dr. Scott. All right. If Japan had been given parity to the US and UK in the naval treaties, would the militaristic factions have become the dominant faction without the manufactured outrage created? Possibly they'd have gone bankrupt trying to keep up with the Royal Navy in Britain, America. But the thing is, the British were unlikely enough to let them. They only, you see, the trouble is for the Britain. If I explain this specifically, allowing parity with the US was fine because the odds of Congress ever actually building up to it, short of there actually being a major conflict, was very, very low. Parity with the IJN was a different matter because the IJN would try and build up to it. It might make them go bankrupt, and then you were dealing with a nation which is bankrupt and has a lot of weapons. The British do not like the idea of dealing with such a nation. And now, we can all look at the problematic problems we have these days with nations which have a lot of weapons, but are not exactly economically rich. They tend to get ideas. So that's an issue. Either way, Japan being given parity is going to cause a lot more troubles than actually Japan being given manufactured outrage. Kevin, which two World War II real aircraft carriers would you want to see in a surface gunfight? How would it go, and what's the possibility of engagement ending in one ramming the other? If you're going to have a surface gunfight, you either have the Lexington and Saratoga while they still had their 8-inch guns, or if you go for one of the armored carriers, and basically anything fighting an armored carrier is probably not going to do well. HMS Formidable has to be in there. She's the one who tries to, and I would probably say HMS Unicorn, mainly because she's the one who decides to attack Korea. There aren't many aircraft carriers which actually carried their own shore bombardment, are there, in history? And that is HMS Unicorn for you going, I have 4-inch guns! Other British ships go, yeah, the American aircraft carrier nearby. He goes, they fired on us. We have a battleship nearby. Engage. HMS Unicorn goes, you have engaged me. I will come closer and engage thee. I have 4-inch guns. And the battery's going, excuse me, sir? Yes. That's supposed to be an aircraft carrier out there? Yes. Why is it getting closer? Isn't it supposed to be launching aircraft? Or some... It's just firing guns and coming closer, sir. Please? Please? I don't know. Senator, you have to build a modern navy to treaty limits. What would you build for a 10,000-ton equivalent cruisers, for 35,000-ton equivalent battleships, for carriers and for destroyers? If I'm building 10,000-ton equivalent cruisers, I'm probably building something which is a... At the moment, the most modern design we have is a Daring class, so I would go with that, probably, because as much as I love the Zumwalts, they're designed for a bigger ship than 10,000 tons. I would probably use them as the basis of my carrier, because it's far easier to grow that design up to 35,000, my battleship, grow that up to 35,000 tons than it is anything else. The Burke design's a little old, so I'll use a Daring class, and I'll stretch it up to 10,000 tons. For destroyers, which were limited, let's go for the limit of the destroyer leaders, which was technically 1,850 tons, but we'll go for 2,000 tons. You can probably make a fairly decent anti-submarine warfare escort on that, but you're gonna want a lot of 10,000 ton ships for it. For carriers, I'm trying to think of a current carrier which is in at 27,000 tons. 27,000 tons. I think you'd be in trouble. I think you need to do some modifications to the treaties for modern ships. The trouble is they're too big. Everything's a size up what it was. The destroyers are definitely in the cruiser range. The cruisers, if we build them, are actually probably in the battleship range, and the carriers are in the super battleship range. Given the submarine walrus could be and post-war was used as light transport, did the Iron ever consider using it as such? They used it as light transport the whole time. It was moving. It's always taking admirals all over the place. Admirals and senior officers will forever get it. The walrus's other job was as fleet taxis. Joda, the first US float plane deployed on the USS Omaha flight cruiser used a black powder charge to essentially shoot the plane off the ship. Who made float plane launching relatively sane routine? It's the sane part. Routine? That one probably goes to the Royal Navy, but that's only just because World War One they invested a lot more in technology in the 1920s. And then by the time the Americans start doing their build-up, they've got quite a lot of information there from the British already out, and they're able to take time to develop themselves. It's a case of the Royal Navy's building more, which has float planes involved in those years, so they get there first. But it's more a case of we all got there on paper roughly at the same time. It's just they built it first. What 642? What is going on with shipping? Sal Malicano. LNG, yes, big LNG, yes, big boom, very big boom, incredibly big boom, and I'm running only 30 minutes behind you all. Can't re-LNG tankers. There's a reason the police and SBS train in Pembrokeshire with the LNG terminals. We have two of the blasted things. Yes, there's a reason they're the other side of the country from London. You worked that one out. Senator Canary, if Australia and New Zealand could have gotten the ships, the British had to get rid of in the Washington Naval Treaty. Who got what ship? Well, Australia would have gone for as many battlecruisers as they could. the New Zealanders would have probably gone, we can't crew anything, we're going to scrap them all. Probably got a load of destroyers. Maybe some of the armor cruisers, possibly. Kevin, is the Italian Navy's impact appreciation overrated because the RM was fighting so many different fronts? The fighting Mediterranean would be much different if the UK didn't have both arms side. I would say the Italian Navy's impact... It's not overrated because it is part of the thing. Yes, if the Royal Navy had just been fighting the Italian Navy, it wouldn't have been even... the Italian Navy would have ceased to exist very quickly. E.g., let's be honest, if the Royal Navy had just been fighting the Rage Marina, then Taranto would have probably happened, but instead of being one carrier, it would have been about 4 or possibly 5. You'd have definitely been looking at Ark Royal, Courageous, Glorious, and Furious. They might have also had the joyous involvement of also Illustrious, if it had taken place in 1940 as well, and at which point the Rage Marina probably ceases to exist. Pretty much sure because we all know how much damage 21 Swordfish do. Imagine what the damage... Well, we got 36, 36, 24, 24, so that's 120. And then another 48, so 168 Swordfish damage they would do. I'm not saying that they would definitely sink the entire fleet. I'm just fairly certain that with 8 times as many torpedoes coming in, there wouldn't be anything of the Italian Navy left. I tell a lie. There would be Giulio Cesare would still be alive. But at which point, more than likely again, if you have the entire battle line of the Royal Navy there, there are 5 Queen Elizabeth class battleships, 2 Renowns, and Hood, because they're the fast ones, charging in at full speed to come and say hello with a crescendo of warm 15-inch shells. There is not a navy left in the morning. Basically, the Italians go to sleep at night and they think they're fine, and then the next morning they wake up and they look around. By next morning after a night of fighting fires, they look around and go, "We no longer have a navy." And that's nothing against them. It's just that you are dealing with... The Italians have 6 battleships. The Royal Navy has 18 various levels. It's just a case of, do you really want to fight us? Really? Larry Shiner, you need to redo your shelf reports. I am going to redo my shelf reports. Actually, this one is still not completed, technically. I have all the bits to firm that up and strengthen that shelf support. It hasn't been. But it's also, to an extent, affected by the warping and the way I've had to position the walls sort of move and span call, so it's all in sort of position, but loosely. And the bookshelves do need to go underneath on there. Larry, and to be fair, Larry, I know several engineers, including my sister. To be fair, I do a fair amount of engineering myself these days. That's good. All the laws about weapons say you can't have them without lawful reason. Using them as part of armed force of the state against an enemy in a declared war is such reason. Yes, that's pretty much why we start looking away. Saffron, have really been enjoying the book, and only and I sell stilettos in Canada as footwear. Only women can have stilettos in Canada. Grace Chelsea, your mini Christmas tree seems to be signaling in Morse code. Yeah, it's certainly saying something. I a few years ago when I first got it and I put it together, I thought it was spelling out Merry Christmas, but I've never been. Every time I checked, I've never been quite sure. It might do, it might not. I'm reading the Battlecruiser in New Zealand and wondering why she survived World War wasn't retained post-war a la Hood. Well, it's kind of like New Zealand, Lion, and Tiger would probably have been, along with Australia, all four of them in a fairly good nick at the end of World War One. And honestly, if two went to New Zealand and two went to Australia, they'd probably been quite happy with them and probably could have supported them at that point, post World War One, as their sort of war victory. But the treaty system came in, and so they were got rid of. Colin Cameron, we know the army got caught out by the habit of getting blind drunk at Xmas during the American War incidents. Have any naval battles been affected in some way? Usually, you don't want to ignore. You want to avoid a Royal Navy which is drunk. A French Navy which is drunk, they get into trouble. A Royal Navy which is drunk gets you into trouble. That's the history of it. GD Harmon, look, imported iron brew to Detroit, stacks up to any American soda, but way too expensive to drink it. Luckily, Detroit has literally pops. Cool. Hello. I'm not sure what, but I think that's Russian. You're saying Vasif text, so you could either be a bot or you could be someone talking to me in. I'm not sure what. Oh, she'll probably look after it. But Carmen, it's almost like she thinks you do something on that site with only fans in the name. No, she doesn't. Although she has been, she was worried at one point because I was talking about the Naked Historian. It was another backup plan I was winding her up with at a point. Why is manufacturing naval gun barrels so complicated? They're essentially big rifle barrels. Yeah, but it's kind of like. How do I put this? Okay, every time we try and scale up a spider's web, and the materials manufacture of spider's webs, hello? We have difficulty. I think I've got a tapper or someone coming to visit. Hello. Hello.
I've got my Christmas cravat on.
Goody. Oh, hello, you have, haven't you? Oh. Hello. Yes, hello. Yes, you're cute. You're cute. Hello. Hello.
I put it on the right way.
I have no idea. Hello. If you haven't noticed, this gentleman has got on him what I got for them for Christmas. See, I've even got the dogs involved in channel advertising now. There you go. On the back of him.
Hello everyone. Merry Christmas. I've been eating my weight in turkey. And possibly I'm going to answer questions. Possibly.
Right. You want to go for a walk? Is that what you came out for?
I was promised there'd be biscuits.
I'm out of fluffy biscuits for you today.
I'll bring the other one in a minute.
All right. Oh. Yeah, I know. Well, this is the reason I have those things on the spreadsheet, so I always make sure all the things work, is so the doggies get the doggy bandanas. And my sister's been complaining because I got them all the bandanas and they never come in to here wearing them. So she brought one down. Port Africa now good on. Why is manufacturing naval barrels so complicated? I was just answering. It's the scaling thing, because like with spiders' webs, when we try and scale those up, we find it's impossible, and I was just going, it just doesn't work. When you're scaling up a barrel, the barrel's weight becomes a factor. It's not really a factor in rifle design. It's not long enough. It's not heavy enough. But once you're scaling up into the sizes we're talking about, and we're talking 20 plus meters, it suddenly becomes a thing. And it's supposed to be self-supporting. And then there's the weight of not just it, but the weight of the shells going through it. And there's the explosions of the shells and the heat and the energy they have to sustain. And you're dealing with quite literally rock. So the thing is, Goban and Breslau might still escape. Goban more likely than Breslau, but they could well have been damaged. And any damage that means they can't be repaired could have big consequences on later in the war. It could mean they don't do the Black Sea forays. It could mean they don't do the charges out into the Mediterranean because they get damaged enough. Geoguy, an A-10's magically transported to World War II will only have a limited number of flight hours on its engines unless their support systems come them. External racks could be adapted for era munitions. The thing is, the A-10's engines are designed for rough maintenance and rough field maintenance, so they're actually incredibly easy to repair. In fact, a friend of mine whose dad worked on Swordfish and who himself ended up working because of his American mum, and his dad was Canadian. His American mum, he ended up working on A-10s. He has always told me that the aircraft most like the Swordfish to maintain that we've managed to achieve in modern period is the A-10. It is that simple to keep going in comparison. Paul of Chicago, HMS Duke of Wellington, best looking ship, the silliest name? No, there's been a few more. There's definitely been a few more with sillier names than that. Merry Christmas, Jack Ray. Sorry, I just got up to your super chat. Thank you. Mighty Aaron, wouldn't the Indefatigable class battlecruiser be somewhat useful as a deterrent against Australia and New Zealand's enemies if they were kept as part of their respective Dominion Navy? They'd be kept upgraded, but also there'd be interesting things what they'd be replaced with, because they might well be able to get them replaced in the mid 1930s. So again, that might help British industry because they might build them in Britain. They'd probably build their replacements in Britain, in which case you get 2 maybe new battlecruisers or fast battleships. You could even get the Royal Navy going for a policy of, right then, we need to replace these 4 ships, and we're going to build 2 ourselves. So, hello. Oh, hello. Yes, you come in. You've also got your bandana on. Hello. Hello.
They come in different colours.
Yes. You rather like yours, don't you? And you're looking around here going, there's biscuits somewhere in here, I know, aren't you? Hello. That's the whole reason you come down here. Not because you love me or anything, it's because of the biscuits.
Yes.
Good boy.
You haven't got biscuits.
You're going to say Merry Christmas to everyone? You said Merry Christmas. That was the Merry Christmas. You looked at them and said hello. Okay. All right. Good boy.
The lights don't work.
The lights do work. I just didn't have time because of the internet to put them up. Right then. You're just bedding yourself down now. All right. Let's see.
Oh,
Go on. All right. Go and check your mic. Oh, you want another Vicky before you go? Oh, what are we? Where are we going? Hello everyone.
You've got my ball.
I have got your ball. And no, you're not getting it back.
Sorry.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah, like, oh. Yes, I know. You are gorgeous. Go on. I'll give you a couple of biscuits to go with. That will keep you happy and make you forget the ball for a second. Oh. Oh, no. Oh. You're basically, now you're hunting the biscuits, aren't you? There you go. There, see, Sissy's got a biscuit. Go on. Good boy.
Biscuit. Unless your new mug.
Yes, they have. Oh, I swear she spends more time watching my spread search sword than I do. Right. 9683-1. Wouldn't the Indefatigable class battlecruiser be something? I didn't mention that. But yeah, it'd be interesting thing would be if the Royal Navy knew they were going to replace 6 ships rather than 2 ships in terms of the Nelson and Rodney, and they were replacing 4 battlecruisers, they might well go with the F3 design rather than the design they did go, and go with the faster version, which could well have been interesting because you could have had true fast battleships. Because they were designed around slightly less armor, but being able to do 28 knots. And it would be in a class of 6 to replace 4 battlecruisers and 2 for the Royal Navy. And that could have been really interesting, because a class of 6 ships built like that with 16-inch guns, well, then those would have had a big impact on the Japanese thought processes. Nightarian, how long would the 1948 Submarine Seagull have lasted before helicopters took over its job? And what ships was it intended to go on? Well, basically, the moment helicopters come in, it's in trouble. Because that's the trouble. Its whole role is, and helicopters do it, can do 90% of its job in about maybe the early 1960s, but probably mid-1950s. Dejun goes wreck. Thank you. Under this scenario, I'm supposing the Canada, Australia, New Zealand would form their own separate ones, which they could have done to and was considered. They would have got at half the rate of Italy and France, so they could have had 3 capital ships and a carrier each. Carmen, do you know any other cities that got basically nuked like Halifax was? There have been a couple over the years, but usually they're smaller than Halifax because usually this stuff is kept far away from them. The Great Fire of Pembroke Dock. Yeah, I've heard of that one, Carl. Dev Squad. 2 fully loaded modern LNG carriers currently lighting and going boom. How does it compare with the Halifax explosion? Order of magnitude bigger. Order of magnitude. Possibly a couple, depending on the way how much they're loaded. Hello, Mitchellites. Happy boxing at all, or as I like to call it, Christmas Day dinner leftovers a day. Sensible. That's right. Santa Holly. Cody 85. New Zealand. We only need HMZS New Zealand, possibly. But that would still be a pretty large navy. For them. During my router dropped twice. I missed the last few minutes. I'd like to see talking about growing Zumwalts when it dropped. We'll have to go back and rewatch later. Seneca South, yeah. Port Hudson, I think, had a similar scenario. Nice to carry on. Wouldn't the single Tiger class battlecruiser and both Lion class battlecruisers be obsolete by World War II? They would be, but as I explained, the scenario is they'd probably be upgraded. They'd be upgraded at some point. That's the thing. They'd be upgraded or they'd be replaced. If the RN was sending 5 carriers, you must expect Italy to intercept signals and scramble their air force. I'd expect a carrier of fighters to escort them. Again, it's night attack. The Italians don't have night flying aircraft in 1940. They don't have fighters to scramble. And again, what the signals are the Italians going to intercept, because the Royal Navy, if they're doing night operations and they want them to be close, they do it all by Aldis lamp. So you're going to have to intercept the signal lamps. It's not like today. Today we are tied to our radio communications doing everything long range. But even today, actually, ships still do have Aldis lamps. And still do go flap, 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 flap. Next message comes back going, flap, flap, flap. No, you cannot have a tea break. We're in the middle of a frigging war, Tommy. Grow up. Signed, the Admiral. Cameron, how does your having an engineering approach background influence your approach? Do what I call forensic engineering quite a bit. In that I tend to read the papers and I look. Ay, caramba. I'm not quite sure, but the bitrate keeps dropping for some reason, and so I apologize for that. I don't know why the bitrate is dropping. I hope you've got my last answers to the last questions, because I just got up to the 5 carriers in Toronto. So I think I did. I hope you heard my answer to 5 carriers in Toronto. If you didn't hear that, low resolution, and I've kept it at 30 frames per second. So hopefully, it stays working and everything stays okay. I do apologize, everyone, for that. I'm not sure what happened, and I'm not sure why it happened. Ay, caramba. Right then. Yes, chucking some binoculars at people could be a sensible thing. Me and having a long phone call with BT about actual issues. How does having an engineering background, influence your approach in naval history as opposed to someone who does not? I tend to, as I might have already said, but I'm not sure if it's come through, I tend to adopt a approach which is best described as forensic engineering. And that tends to be my philosophy. So I do a lot of check, what are you saying, what do you claim you're saying, what is the reality of what you're saying versus what you actually do, and forensic engineering approach. And I take that into a lot of things. And it's one of the interesting, the scary things, because I do have to learn quite a lot of engineering, and I do maintain engineering as a separate language. That has caused an interesting conversation in the past, but as I point out, there is all sorts of phrasings and lexicons with part of engineering, which does make it a separate language. So that's good. Was your mum worried about you in regards to Naked Historian idea, or for everyone else? I think everyone else. 6040, hello Melanie. And good quality rifles are difficult to manufacture. They are. John Barrett, a favourite battlecruiser look like? Personally, I like HMS Queen Mary and IJNS Krishna and Harifet. My favourite is always going to be HMS Renown. I'm sorry. I have a soft spot for her. Just go. Yes, hello Zebedee. Yeah. Oh. Tanya Felaka, today is my Boxing Day tradition. I watched The Cruel Sea. How realistic is the depiction of life in sea convoys, squadron convoys? Very realistic. It was actually, most of the people involved had been actually served on them, and quite a lot of people involved in writing and producing it had served on them. And they really didn't know what they were talking about. Thank you everyone for saying the good doggies look good. Colin Cameron, I watched a 2-part on monitors and was wondering if you have a dead cat now. I know you said you were getting a radio mic. Yeah. Radio mic is actually got and actually works and is fine now. I had it, it was all fine. But the connector I had, because I hadn't done any filming, and I'd had the connector for my old mobile phone, and I hadn't remembered when putting it together that the new mobile phone has a different bottom bit than the old one. So the connector, of course, wouldn't freaking work. Fun times. It strikes me a corgi could be a good morale booster on a ship. It could be. Corgis definitely could be a good morale booster. Sometimes dressing my Australian cattle dog Blue Halo as Skull and Crossbones is a strong hint. He bites a lot. Yeah. Yeah, there were several issues in Chicago, especially with the loading of ships during World War II. Carl, what happened between gun barrels and Goban? Ooh, so much. That's good. Suddenly I appreciate how Admiral Kill felt when having to endure Admiral BT. Yeah. That shows. Does the Tafra demand its advertising retainer in biscuits? Yes. The Royal Router. Do you roll the router? the US Navy likely deployed nuclear shells on the Moyne-class cruisers. How do they intend to use those shells in the event of nuclear war? Against coast targets or surface targets? More likely the former than the latter, but potentially the latter. More likely though the former. If they're using them against they found a major concentration of enemy ships. Nice hearing. How long would the 1948 submarine Seagull have lasted before helicopter took its job? I think I answered that one. I said mid-1950s, I reckon. An additional 2 capital ships, with other nations building back 2 ships of their own. Would they be more likely to keep 2 gauge GVs or the 2 Lions? Because have dropped its requirements down as low as I physically can go and still maintain an actual decent quality of video. It's 1280 by 720 and it's 30 frames per second. But it keeps dropping down low. I'm not sure what is happening. So, as I said, the plan is to go to 9 o'clock, but I have to admit, if it goes really, really badly, I might send a message and go, sorry. Because BT do seem to be... I'm actually, seriously, getting an electrician in to look up the internet setup, because BT are trying to blame it on the connections to the office, which you have to get an electrician in to do and certify. So I'm getting an electrician to look at and certify. And then after that, I am going to have a fight with BT, probably. Love of God, bless them. Second, plot twist. New Zealand buys its replacement battlecruisers from Japan. Ooh, that would be a plot twist. Japan would love it. The Royal Navy would probably go, okay, let's have the latest Japanese technology and have a look at it. After all, could Australia and New Zealand have been given repulse from renowned 1930s in the RN instead against brand new battlecruisers? Probably not, because the RN would be quite happy to replace repulse and renown, and they've got other things they want to replace before they buy new battlecruisers. Don't take this the wrong way, but it's actually easier to build a battleship than a battlecruiser, and the Royal Navy needs to replace the R-class in the 1930s. That's the big thing on their priority list. The battlecruisers are fine if they've been upgraded. Right, where does the pool go? Wherever it wants. Yes. Calvin, the NRA is doing his job of helping you get a book to research, probably. I've got a few of his toys up here. This is going to sound strange, but he loves these balls, but he destroys them. So I always have some sitting in my office. And he's realised where that one was hiding, so that one will have to move. He hasn't spotted that one before. So that's what he's after. Okay, so when do we get brand new when do we get branded doggy sweaters? No joke. My mum was actually asking for that. And I'm going, Spreadshirt, don't do them. And I think she's now searching places for them. Because I see it. I have now realized that pretty much all the sales of doggy themed stuff that have come from my Spreadshirt store are stuff being bought for the various family dogs. The entire family's collection of dogs, I swear when they get together, are all going to be fully branded. In my store in Naval history, although some of them have Blackburn on them, and some of them have Catalina. There does seem to be a division, and the division it's not just within my family; it's also, Raleigh, the fluffy research assistant, is one of 10. And unfortunately, not all of the people who got puppies from litter have kept in contact with the breeders. But 8 have, and 7 of them have got various bandanas from my store for their dogs. So I often wondered why. The 2 things I sell most on the store, 3 things I sell most are these. These lovely hoodies go like anything. Everyone seems to love them. I get lots of messages back going, Ooh, we really like the hoodies. They're really well made and really warm. The very nice stickers and mouse pads sort of things, which I sort of grouped together, and the dog bandanas. And I was going, how have I sold something like 40 dog bandanas? Going, who's buying them all? I love them. I do, but do my fluffs have their own, fan club or something who are all buying these bandanas? No, I think it's mostly going to my family, who are bedecking. There is one, my aunt's West Highland Terrier, apparently has 7 of them, and that's a different one for each day of the week. And you sort of go, really? I didn't realise you could get 7 of them. And I think the 7th one might be a Drakenfell themed one. I'm not sure how they've got a 7th one, but they have. Some IJN admirals and doctrines were deeply concerned with land-based air freight. Did the IJN seriously consider armored carriers in the RO manner? They did, but they didn't want to sacrifice strike. And at this point, it seems rather appropriate to show this. This is the new book, which is the Christmas present I got from the patrons. So thank you, patrons. This is what I use for Christmas present money. And the reason I got this was because after Shokan, which is the book I like to show you off, which was by Richard Fuller, which has all the officers in there. This is another biographical book of all of the members of the Imperial Japanese Navy, the Nihon Kaigun. And you can use it to track down pretty much anyone. Anyone who basically gets to Admiral rank is going to be in here. Their various roles, what they did, especially also Imperial ships. And it's this gives you a full list of what they did. It's 1900 to 1945. And it's the sort of book which, honestly, only people who are doing sort of writing a book themselves or doing academic research probably would be interested in. Because I'm not sure if you can see it clearly on this particular resolution, but it literally is a list of names. That's it. It's a list of names and when they got to what rank they were, where they did, what they did, how they did it. It's when you do things like you realize Nomura, Admiral Kishibaro Nomura, who was extraordinary ambassador to the United States 1940 to 1942. It's an interesting book to have. I have to admit, the reason I got it, and the reason it sort of came in, was because of this section. And it's what I call, Alex, how you try and figure out who's who at meetings when the Japanese have photos. When you can find a book like this, which is literally a picture of all of them, you can start to figure it out when they are all when it's all in different linguistics. As you noticed, I am kind of working on trying to improve the understanding of both the Japanese Navy and the Royal Navy, and when I say Royal Navy, I mean the Regia Marina, and the Royal Navy and sort of the other navies, and how they were preparing for World War II in different ways, and why it doesn't necessarily not make sense if they're not doing the same thing as another navy. This is causing me fun, especially with the Japanese, and I'm building up quite a significant Japanese section of books, I have to admit. I'm now at probably half a dozen decent ones and 2 dozen books in total. The other dozen and a half are mostly fairly good on specific points, but not good generally on the thing. Whereas there are half a dozen which I think would trust with anything. Nightingale, if Hood had caught her refit, would she have kept her aircraft portable after 1943? No. 10 more 2-minute enough carriers coming in. Carmen, any chance of doing a video on it? On what? Carl Harmon, what would you like a video on? Sonic Nerd, 2 LNGs colliding compares favorably to a hydrogen bomb. I'm not sure if I would call it comparing favorably to a hydrogen bomb. I'd call it. It's not really favorable for anyone involved. Unless you're one of those people who's watching from a very great distance and doesn't care about anyone involved. Here you go. Tao and Shanano had armored flight decks more or less. Yes, pretty much. They sort of the Japanese start to get there once. It's basically once you're no longer thinking about the treaties at all, then an armored flight. Then what happens is you go right then. It only becomes a choice of armored flight deck or large carrier under the treaty system where you have a. Because if you're intelligent, you automatically want your carrier to be as survivable as possible, which means armored hangar carrier, an armored box around certain parts of it. Makes sense. And having a large air group makes sense. The Royal Navy do not want a small air group. It's just, in their criteria, looking at things, they're thinking that the armored flight deck and the armored carrier means you still have the aircraft on day 2 because your carrier survives, which means it's better to have a smaller number of aircraft longer term because they like persistent air group operations, but they would still like a larger carrier if they could get away with it. If the Royal Navy could have built a 36,000 ton carrier in the 1930s and based their fleet around those, then those would probably have been armored carriers with 72 aircraft, i.e. they'd have been a combination Illustrious and Ark Royal. I don't know if military shipyards work 24/7 in peacetime, but how big a ship could you build in the end, and how would you arm it? If in a year, at the moment, I could probably in a year churn out a 2,000 to 3,000 ton vessel. Probably it would have to have off-the-shelf, lower-end systems. If I was the Danish, I could build another Musen and have it armed with top-of-the-range stuff. Probably in a year if I really wanted to. If I'm the British, I can probably build a enhanced variation of a River-class Batch 2 with Sea Scepter and some interesting weapons. Probably a Mark 57mm, Mark 110 Sea Scepter, maybe Harpoon strapped on it. Basic radar. Yeah, because quite a lot of items are long lead items. You have to order a fairly large string of months. So you're talking about stuff which is already in production that you can go and order and they can actually churn out something. Nightingale, if the Amphibian class was to replace the S class and T class, what was to replace the U class and V class? That was something they were actually working on. The Royal Rotor. How did the US Navy intend to use the nuclear shells it had and from what was deployed on Des Moines class cruisers? I think I've answered this. Would they have been used to vaporize a Sverdlov or some coastal city? Probably a coastal city. Gene Harmon. Service battle between Clarke, and Lexington. How would a midway versus 18, 5 inch 40, 54 zone? Can midway probably do quite well. But most of them don't really come into service till World War II is pretty much over. Which is why I was going with the earlier ones. Hello, 6365. Hello! That's good. I'm not sure about the cost, but you might consider a business contract PT. They tend to give better service to customers they assume have access to lawyers. Oh, there is going to be a long conversation with BT at some point. A long conversation. Senator, the forensic engineering is the last thing we heard. Thank you. Sometimes, what if Nimitz with Cult, Pacemaker, and Yamato with Katana met in Midway Islands for a mano-a-mano combat? Who wins the Battle of Midway? Samuel, honestly, probably Nimitz. Let's be honest. Yamato with Katana is a pretty scary thing, but if you've got a Cult Peacemaker, you can probably take someone out with it. Sorry, I hope the crashing is now over and now working. And it's still working. Bum-ba-dum. Right then, that is now working. But the chat has got lost, so hello chat, let's see if I can find it. Well, I found the praise be working now. XSplit, sorry everyone, that's from me. Not from a bedroom, no. I managed to get it working. Russia, I think the Clarke got attacked by Japanese torpedo boats. It was close. It was close. Right then. Night of Merchants, Merry Christmas. Could you answer? Hello, Night of Merchants. Could you answer what add about the War Office papers on the Far East getting saved to Singapore and not falling in IJ and into the hands of IJ and Admiral Kondo? More than likely that would give the British a bit of a better playing card, but not much. Because the Japanese had a lot more information in those papers to work out where the British Army was. And the British Army in Malaya was being kind of loud about where it was and what it was doing. And the Air Force even more so, because they were building all these... This is the thing I never understand about the Air Force. They're building all these air bases, and they've got no aircraft for them. And they know they've got no aircraft for them. Everyone knows they've got no aircraft for them. And yet they're still building them. Because they think that's going to deter the Japanese, because they say, we've got all these air bases. Yes, we've got no aircraft on them. Sorry. Oh, hello. Right. 1960 everyone. How do ships' immunity zones work? As Hood's immunity zone is inner limit is 12.78 miles, outer limit 16.78 miles, giving a width of 3.9 miles. Can I find a decent diagram to explain it? Or am I going to have to say, I will punt? Basically, okay, the zone of immunity is an area from which both plunging fire and direct fire is going to be at its least effective. So, from the greater range, plunging fire is going to be more effective. From the shorter range, direct fire is going to be more effective. But So pretty much what you're saying in that zone is in that if they can keep the enemy in that space, in that distance bracket, then if the enemy's doing plunging fire, that's not going to be as effective because their armor is built to withstand that to a good degree. And direct fire is not going to be as effective because their armor is built to withstand that to a good degree. That doesn't make the same as invulnerability. I don't like the phrase immunity zone because it makes it sound like this is a place where we're safe if the enemy. It's not. It's a place where they are less likely to get hurt. It's not immunity. It's I don't know. Inhibited zone. The inhibiting zone for the enemy. So, how would a 22,000-ton treaty ship be called? What would a trawled and what would you arm them with? 22,000-ton treaty ship would be called an armored cruiser because that's the only thing you could really do. And well, what would you arm them with? Probably 12-inch guns. If you're going for 22,000 tons, you're talking either something up to 10-inch guns or 12-inch guns. Probably up to 12-inch guns. I might see some in the area who get very attracted to 11-inch as a concept again. I think, why does everyone forget that the UK basically cheated on naval treaties with nations, counties, and lack of disposing of 15-inch guns from the courageous? 96831, as I've tried to explain to you many times, and many other people, we're British. We are lovely. We are gentlemen. Everyone therefore thinks we are both A, dumb, and B, very law-abiding. And yet still, whenever the Americans wish to cast a villain in Hollywood, they usually invariably have a British accent. Or alternatively, a doctor who is going to cure people by being rude and absent-minded. Or a very critical judge, in the case of Simon Cowell. What can I say? We're good at what we're good at. But mainly it's because we rigged the rules in our favour, so we didn't so much cheat as give ourselves allowances. Come. Odd question. But did the Japanese Navy use a specific alphabet for documents? I know they have more than one native alphabet, as well as British-built and captured Russian ships. Interesting. And now Vast Tech has turned up again. I'm not sure who that is. Did the Japanese Navy use a specific alphabet for documents? That's honestly something I haven't really looked into. I think they mainly do. They mainly use. This is going to sound strange. The imperial, what I've always heard referred to as the imperial alphabet, but I'm not even sure if that's actually a real thing. It's just something I've heard people say. So I'd have to talk with Kanika about that. Geoguy, could a carrier of the same replacement be completed faster than a battleship in World War II? Yes, mainly because of the armor. The battleship's armor is going to take a lot of time to get it right and get it made and completed in the same fashion, and then you have to put in the huge guns and fit everything out on those. An aircraft carrier is actually a little bit easier to build than a battleship. Hello, Richard Orta. Geoguide, Japanese use katakana. for foreign loanwords, I think, but they had 4 separate alphabets, and it's been 20 years or so, I'm not sure. Samuel Thompson, reading Pacific Crucible about USN versus IGN 1941-42. Many IGN animals, especially Yamato, were opposed to War USA as it looked hopeless. Attritional warfare ahead.
Tell I have changed location. I am now plugged directly into the router. The router and I are having a long and meaningful conversation about the meaning of its continued existence, and whether or not it should actually start working. I'm hoping it does. Anyway, this means, because I am on a single screen and running off battery, I will be finishing this about 9:15. Right then, so I've thrown in some messages from me, so I'm going back to I can go back to those. I don't know. BT are just annoying. Take care, Jonathan Farrer. Thank you, 9684. This Vox, has the internet died? Yes, it did die, but I'm back. Had a vintage card in history. I'm back. Super cans and string might be better. Nice hearing. Why has the myth sprung up that Hood made that turn? That she'd be why is that had Hood made that turn that she'd be safe when really Hood still isn't? It's not Ranger finders were locked on Hood. There's a lot of myths around that. There is a lot of myths around Hood being sunk. It's a case of if she had turned, she might well have avoided the footfall of shot. There does seem to be a Russian bot. Well, that's fantasy. Perhaps I suggest I have now reached popularity that a Russian bot has turned up. Anyway, hopefully I'm back and hopefully you can see me. Hopefully. Okay, Bishon. Take care. Thank you, Bishon. Hello, Doc. That's good. Would it be a pity if there was DCS on the Fortnite servers? The Xbox has got turned off. You're back. Yes, I am. He's alive. He's possibly in the dark. I'm not sure what you can see of me. I'm under orders not to turn the lights on in this room because Mum's embarrassed with the wallpaper. She would like this is one of the rooms which I have got to do work on next. I have got a list of when I don't have to spend half my time half of any time off I take a week on the phone to EDF, British Gas and British Telecom. I will get a whole load of DIY done hopefully. Anyway, sorry about that. But anyone wants a guess? It's one of these routers. So, as you can guess, I'm about to say I am not a big fan of these routers. These? Annoying routers. Annoying router. Likes to go wrong on me. That's good. It's just sending the router to Demo Ranch. They'll see how it reacts to 50 cal. Well, this is my reaction to it. You're going to see something which I don't think I've ever done on air. Very bad for you, but very good. Mainly because I left my glasses behind in the office. Bichon, both BTs, British Telecom and me are annoying. Good night and good luck. You're not annoying, Bichon. BT, British Telecom is. You're not. Geoguy, Hood's armor had its own issues. Design before plunging out was a thing. To an extent, where before plunging fire got as accurate as it did, certainly. Certainly before plunging fire got as accurate as it did. Vintage car history. The wallpaper in the dim light looks like it came from a Stephen King movie. It's very pretty under certain circumstances. But yeah, it is on my list of things to do. 681. I don't think 3 inch or more of deck armor would save hood. No, I don't think it would. I'd say about another foot or so of lower belt armor might do a difference. As in a foot down. A foot deeper. And already, it looks like the Apocalypse Now version of OSG Live. Very atmospheric. Cool. Definitely Boxing Day. Sound awesome. Who here does not accept Drakenfell explanation of the golden BB double Patronus hood? Quite a few people still don't. I have to say, the more and more work I've done looking at Drax's work and going through it, the more and more I have sat there and thought, he's actually onto something. And he's onto something by looking at, because he's down. He's on the timeline analysis, and no one. How do I put it? He started off by looking at the timeline analysis first, and then working out what fitted the timeline, rather than adjusting the timeline to fit their analysis of what they think caused the explosion. And that's the difference, and that's where he's come to the different result. Giga, you mean extending the bolt so it's taller? I'd say lower. The problem is where the shell hits with the thread. Oh, and by the way, other note, I should admit, the microphone didn't come with me as well. So this is using the laptop's microphone and the laptop's battery power. Vintage Car history. Were you aware that both Thames Ironworks and Thundercraft made luxury cars prior to World War I? Yes. Also, and although I've never seen a picture, so I'm not 100% sure, but my dad told me that Camel Laird's made some cars as well at one point. So, apparently they were made in the shipyard for the directors. But, you know. If anyone knows of the truth of that, or whether it was a father pulling his son's leg, who knows? Who knows? These things are always fun. Not herself. Although if Hood did have 3 extra inches of deck armor, thus having a deck equal Nelson, her entire tactics would be different. Yes, she would have probably... Well, that would extend the range of plunge. You see, the thing about plunging fire is it works best when you're a certain distance, when you're actually further away, because you can do more of that. Where if you've got thicker armor, your extension of distance you can keep away goes further and still be in your preferred spot. Vintage Caster, how to spell that? Camel Laird's literally is spelled as it sounds, like camel, and then Laird's, L-A-I-R-D-S. Desert Foxer, hello! Hello, Desert Foxer. How much of an effect for fleet basing and shipbuilding did Northern Ireland have for the Royal Navy, and how would it have affected the Royal Navy if it had left out with Ireland? Not as much for basing, although there was certainly quite a lot that used for the aircraft and air paths of protection of Western approaches. The thing is, you lose 2 big yards, including Harlan and Wolfe. But then the construction jobs which go to them and the work which goes to them, and things like HMS Belfast especially, which go to them, would have gone to other yards in the UK. So it's a case of, yes, you lose some good yards, but... And frankly, the Clarke shop is... Clarke yard is one of the bigger losses. who I was talking about in the monitors video. But yeah, it gets problematic to sort of work it through. It depends on how they approach it and which yards get it. But honestly, my honest opinion is anything that happens to Harland Wolf and that sort of scenario in terms of getting knocked out probably has the biggest impact on the yards in Northern England, especially I would say the ones in North. You see, the thing is, the ones on the Mersey have access to a huge amount of water, which makes them far easier to expand. So you might actually be dealing with an expanded Camel Lairs. You might be there might be a few other names from around that area would surprise. Pembrokeshire Dockyards role and shipyard might actually survive. So you might actually have construction going on in Wales. Thank you, Gary Sowski. Let's take section 1. Hood was 8 miles from Bismarck when she sank. Yes, so times that by 1,760, and you have the distance in roughly yards. Which, 8,000 plus 6,000 plus 80, 14,000 roughly yards. 14,100, 14 between 14. We're talking roughly. Hang on, okay. Yeah, we're talking roughly 14,080 yards, roughly, approximately. That's not a good space for B for Hood. That's good. Not related to naval history, but Nintendo tried making many things before toys. The first toy was based on a grabber tool one of their janitors made to avoid having to go under desks. Grabber tools. They're so much fun. Just out, if Harlan Wolf can try and make tanks, then I can easily believe Camel Air making a car. Yeah. English car history. Camel Air does not show up as having built a car for public sale. England required registration of cars for public roads by 1903. I find no record of them in my archives. No. I don't think they would have been for public sale. They would have been made for the directors if they had been. And let's put it this way. My thinking has always been, if it was true, because my dad told me this, and unfortunately he didn't live that much long after for me to quiz him. But my thinking, if it was true, was if it was true, they got chassis and engines off Rolls-Royce because them and Rolls-Royce had a good friendship going on, and probably built. Well, when I say they got the frame, etc., off Rolls-Royce, and then they built basically the stuff on top. The Metro Camel was spun off from Laird's. Carlson. It could be interesting. It's something to look at. It's something I'm going to look into at some point. That's what Carlson Rail Cars. London Underground was started by American investors and so uses American railroad terminology. Derb Scott, where did you hear that one? I'm not sure who has told you that particular history, but that's not really the story. Basically, the London Underground, if it has a start anyway, is the Metropolitan Railway, which is built 1863 and continued to serve to 1933 before they sort of modified it. It's no. How do I put it? The big investors into it were the GWR and the GNR. And the City of London Corporation. They invested each somewhere in the region of £200,000 each. So that was 600,000 from them. No, mainly the difference in terminology comes from their construction and design and what they were supposed to do. And arguably from Charles Pearson, his phraseology. But no. And the reason, what I was looking at, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm looking at, is one of my students a few years ago wrote a dissertation on the history of the London Underground and development of the London Underground. So I was sort of going back to their dissertation and checking it, because I helped supervise it. There's a lot. The Falklands plays a role in World War I of the Battle of Falklands, and basing Battlecruiser out for a while. Did the Falklands play a role in World War II as a fleet base? Yes, that's where HMS Cumberland was refitting. They're not a fleet base. Fleet base, we understand. They're a sort of a safe harbour that they can go and do work in to themselves, and where fuel tends to be found sitting. It's one of the things. People often go, well, you know, the Royal Navy, they don't have the at-sea resupply the Germans do with the Altmark and etc. These things for the surface raiders. Okay, the Royal Navy doesn't need to. The Royal Navy's supply ships sit in the Falkland Islands with protection around them, and basically, if you turn up to try and attack them, you're going to get whumped. So that frees up Royal Navy escorts and destroyers and cruisers to go off and hunt the surface raiders. Now, Sharon, from website about Bismarck. When Bismarck's 5th salvo hit the hood, distance was less than 9 miles. That wouldn't surprise me. Geo guys, so was the shot that killed Hood similar to the Japanese were trying to work out the hulk of Tussa underwater plunging shells? To an extent. Go and have a look at Drax's video. That explains it in great detail. That's one. I've simplified the mess that was the South London Underground a lot. Yeah, their linguistics starts a lot earlier. Not quite that, but Charles Yerkes was a major investor in the ground in roughly 1900. Yeah. Senator, currently watching while building absolutely cursed-looking ship in UAD. Oh, I love Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. That's the reason why I'm not playing computer games that much on my computer, because whenever I do, I'm playing Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, and it stops being computer game, it starts being work, because I'm going, what can this about? Currently, I'm trying to persuade Drac, and we might work on it, to work on a what-if video, because there is a very interesting prospect of potentially being able to, potentially there being a treble turret design available to the British, if the picture that I've been sent is labelled correctly. And that has a very big impact, because if the British adopt the treble turret at the time they could have done, it could have caused a very big change in things. Knife and Productions. On the subject of railways, I have 2 questions for you. Question 1, what is your favourite of the big 4 railways companies? Mine's the Hour. Question 2, can we get a quick video on our in dockyard Lycos? Yes, on the RN Dockyard locos, but if I would do it, I'd want to do it with some footage at Chatham, where they still have various things there that I could use, whereas and probably do some footage at Portsmouth as well of the railway lines they still have in existence, because I love the Dockyard locos. My 00 gauge railway is LNER themed. My N gauge railway, which I'm putting together and planning for the office, is GWR themed. So that tells you what I like. The reason I've gone for the GWR themed N gauge in part is because honestly it fits the things I do better, and also I just find the little 262s cute in N gauge. They just really are cool. Dan Freeman, did or has Drac planned to submit his thesis on Hood at all? If not, why not? I'm hoping he's going to do. I'm trying to get him to. He wants to do some testing in various things, and I support that testing, but I want to see that published as a paper at some point. Jonathan, we spent yesterday convincing Drac to do a bilge pumps on CVA1 just to make Jamie's head explode. That would make Jamie's head explode, but it would be fun. It will be fun. Seneca, what time are we talking about? Early 1910s. There's a Fox. Was there any attempt to rebuild the E-class destroyers with modern dual-purpose main battery in around the run up to World War II? Not really, because the E-class destroyers were quite new. This is the point. The A, the B, the D's, all these destroyers are quite new. They're all early 1930s, early 1930s destroyers, so they're quite modern, quite new. And the 4.7-inch was considered a dual-purpose battery when it was built. Vintage Kasha, did the red flag Act of 1865 have a significant effect on British commercial, coastal and canal traffic? Yes and no. Yes, it brought in some standards. No, because it took a lot longer to actually get those standards properly implemented than you might think. Night Secretary 21. Would it be fair to say her Hood's own fame helped her in? To an extent, she was like Ark Royal, a ship with a target on her back. She certainly did have a target on her back. Now, as said, I'm going to go on for about another 35 minutes. The reason I'm limiting that is because I'm on battery power, and the battery power is already down to 70%. And frankly, that's probably about the time I've got before this lovely contraption next to me has another panic attack. So Johnson, how's the Canadian National Rail on Suntan? Hope that your friend has treated it well and looking forward to its debut on the channel. It's going to be treated very well. Unfortunately, it was going to be dropped off just before we had another sort of COVID lockdown. But it's going to be taken in by them, and probably actually going to be taken in by them now next year. It's taken long enough to get time to look at it and do it properly for me, because they were ill. And they were also isolating while at home because their family was a bit shielded. And they should really be shielded because they're that old. But they're now better. They didn't. It wasn't COVID. It was another fun thing. Luckily, or not luckily, really, considering how ill they were. And they're now okay. So they're going to look into it. And probably they reckon it'll take, because they're going to give it a full bath and a full tweak up and a full look at, it'll probably be in a very special works, which they've said I might get to go and take some pictures of it being in the works for a good 3 months. So I probably, if I'm lucky, I will get it back in March next year in time for my birthday. I know, it's taken forever, but it's getting there. Her Shadow Flag mission probably delayed her refit as well. I'd say, yep. John South, if Archer had survived to the late war and gone to Pacific, what type of air group could she have had? Anything. There isn't a single aircraft around there that she couldn't have loaded with. Probably she would have been mostly... I could see her having a fairly... Ooh, a lot of those. Corsair heavy group, I reckon she'd probably end up with. Corsair and Firefly heavy. Maybe some Avengers, but a lot of Corsairs. Already, when I get as Sonate, my grandfather got me a ride on a yard steam loco at NISB before it closed out forever. Can I imagine how busy a place and New York S was in like the 30s, 40s? Yep. This is Fox. What would the effect on the Royal Navy be if HMS Illustrious sunk down in Operation Excess? Oh, it would have been massively problematic, but could also cause the surge of carrier construction like you wouldn't believe. That's one of the problems for the Royal Navy, is that the armoured carriers, they do survive. And to an extent, that takes the pressure off construction, which is why I would argue the Royal Navy don't get the Midways, their Maltas, which are the Midway equivalents. How is it 1640? Dynamic Productions. I'm not sure if we covered this before, but what was the USN's reaction to Tribal Class, and what did they make of them? I haven't checked if they did have anything that measured up in time. Mostly, they're building... Oh, that's definitely... I'm fairly sure Iraqi Polski is definitely a... is something. But when the Tribals were coming into service, the Americans mainly looked and went, interesting. What shall we do? Well, we're building big destroyers ourselves, yes. But our destroyers are big torpedo-heavy destroyers. Yes, because that fits our doctrine. That was the thing. The Americans were thinking about a mass torpedo strike, and I have to say, the Americans really were thinking about a mass torpedo strike. The Royal Navy were thinking about a melee battle. Sorry, this is going more quickly on this screen. Mic is clipping. I'm sorry about that. I'm having to use the laptop mic. I'll try and get its settings sorted out quickly. Hopefully without losing anything. Diddly-do-do-do-do-do. Hello. So hopefully that's sorted out the clipping. If it hasn't, tell me, and I will try and fix it. Oh no, I'm glad that your friends are doing better now. I'm sorry that I had to miss having help, but I'm thankful that they've recovered. Please pass along my wishes. I will do. I'm fairly sure this particular friend is a lovely gentleman who manages to work on about 3 different steam railways. So He's a cool gent. Laptop's mic is less fun. A vintage car history. Old US sailor here was an FC and worked on a few systems, including Mark 68 GFC. Yes, it is not a Doppler radar. There were Dopplers out there, but were any contemporary GFCS that were Doppler? I think there was one, but the joy of memory is I'm trying to remember its name and designation number, and I can't. But I think there was one which is roughly contemporary. Roughly contemporary. Colin Cameron, I know you said you were working on a book based on your PhD, but are you going to put out a book that is a compendium of articles, papers when you think you have enough? Potentially, but also there's part of me which always thinks of that is that I already have the articles and papers have already been published, so it feels a bit lazy to put them together and do that as that sort of scenario. But there are some articles on tribal class destroyers, for example, which feature which bits got moved into the book to an extent, but they got expanded upon, so they were separate enough I didn't really feel bad. Guy, what was the type of repair extension you're proposing to Hood's main belt something that could be done in a refit, or would they have been limited by the original design? It could have been done in a refit, but would have been expensive, so probably had to be done in the design when it was built. Oh, GWR infrastructure is cool. LBT, what did folks get for Asmus? A nautical nature. My wife got me a collection of RN mess bowls, 18 in all. Very cool. Cool. I had some things to show you in my office, but that was it. That's not happened, man. Desvox, how good of a gun was the 4.7-inch gun? Was there an attempt to make it dual-purpose and it worked? There were attempts to make it dual-purpose. Theoretically, the mounts on the tribal class destroyers were dual-purpose, but they couldn't raise it high enough. And the main thing was the length of the barrel and making it all work together, which is why they end up going with the 4.5, because you can keep the caliber at the ratio for the level of 4.5 versus 4.7 the same, but it's a slightly shorter, slightly lighter barrel, which you can do far more maneuvering with, and that's the main thing. It's speed of being able to turn an angle you can raise it to. Let's take out a different one. Alt history. Hood suffers catastrophic failure in one of our engines. What did the British do? Depends when it happens and where it happens. If it happens while she's on her way to fight the Bismarck, ouch. If it happens while she's fighting Bismarck, double ouch, because that's probably her in issues and pulling out of the fighting line. If it's happened before, at the beginning of the war, she might well be sent in for major refit, because if you've got a catastrophic failure of the engine, you're probably going to be rebuilding the ship anyway to fix the engine. Engines, as my experience with gearboxes on Subaru shows, engines, when they go wrong, are expensive and problematic. Prince of Wales probably doesn't get to send a head alone if the engine fails early enough. Probably they call up KGV and try and get her to race over to wherever Prince of Wales is. It could end up, if it happens early enough, it could end up with the two King George V class vessels engaging Bismarck, and that could have been an interesting battle, because KGV had already worked up, and so you'd have been dealing with two fast battleships, which, yes, whilst Bismarck could technically potentially outrun them, in heavy seas they're fundamentally limited to roughly the same speed, so they're probably in practical purposes not going to outrun them, in which case it turns into a slogging match. And you don't have a moment of, oh, we've lost Hood. I will edit as my voice goes up. I will open the audio mixer and cut that down a bit, so it doesn't go as loud, hopefully. hopefully that makes it a bit better for you. Gross LC, Dan Snow, TV historian, Christmas wish on Twitter was for Nicholas Rogers to finish the third part of his Iron History. I think we'd all like that. We would all like that, but I don't think putting pressure on him in that way is probably a good idea. Knowing Nicholas Rogers, he's... let's put it this way, the times I met him, he's an incredibly private and hard-working man who's trying his best to do something which is an incredibly difficult and encompassing work, if you would consider his previous volumes. So, no, I would... seems a bit to me. Yes, as much as we'd all like it finished. Doing that on Twitter... let's put it this way, it's not my style. Nighttown Productions. It is 1929, 1930s, and you know war is coming in 1939. What do you do so that Hood is the best condition possible for war, but you can't modernize like Renown? If I know war is coming in 1939, and consider it's 1929, 1930s, and I know war is coming, then those works on radar sets which you saw, which I know would be getting absolutely maximized. And honestly, I'd probably be building the bigger destroyers to try and make sure I had them, and I'd be ordering sloops like anything, so I would have more anti-submarine warfare escorts. So I'd probably do all that, because if I have more anti-submarine warfare escorts, then the odds are Courageous doesn't get sunk because she has more protection with her and hopefully she doesn't end up doing that. Hopefully I find a way around to, I don't know, make some more oil tankers and fast oilers which can be rapidly converted into escort carriers, have them built as a standard thing, so that they can do the anti-submarine warfare and convoy protection. Then I have fleet carriers around. So hopefully any strike operations, any operations like Hood and Prince of Wales going to hunt down Bismarck involves Hood, Prince of Wales, and an aircraft carrier going to hunt down Bismarck. Because my theory is that if there's an aircraft carrier involved, also launching strikes of torpedo bombers, then that makes life go a lot more differently for Bismarck. A, that probably slows her down. And B, that allows the British ships to be far more controlled and controlling it. But that's if I have 10 years' notice. Desert Fox. If the IJA failed to create the Pincer attack and HMS Repulse slips away, what do you think her following serves would be? Would the British, having a capital ship, help coordinate aviation command? Yeah. You would probably get... it would be quite simple. Probably the senior Royal Navy admiral in the area, if not one they could fly out there. They would find one admiral, fly them out there, and they would be command the ABDA command from HMS Repulse. And you might also, this is going to sound strange, you might also, thinking of the timeline, get Renown and an aircraft carrier shoved out there as quickly as possible. Because if you've got an actual battle group to reinforce, you're going to go with all efforts to reinforce it. So it actually could be Admiral Somerville gets sent. It quite possibly could be Somerville gets dispatched in a plane and flown out there. And gets the command from Repulse. Manage everyone listening on terrible low-end laptop speakers. A solution? How? I know. I do apologize, but there was limited to what I could grab, and I had a choice. It was the mic or the bottle of Iron Brew, and I picked the bottle of Iron Brew. Mention it. The main problem I had with an 87 Subaru I owned for 18 years was that the timing belts kept giving up the ghost more quickly than they should have. My experience so far, my belts have been okay. It was the gearbox which decided to go bump. Thank you, Sarah Thompson. This one. I think the first thing might be to go to US and make the Second Amendment rights theory of AA mounts. That would certainly happen at some point. If in 1929, 1930s, I know war is coming in 1939, there is a lot of things which change. And honestly, there would have been renowned style modernizations of pretty much everything. Those shipyards which went bust in the 1930s wouldn't have gone bust if I knew World War II was coming in 1939. They would have had ships going in and out of them getting repaired and upgraded. And certainly there would be no King George V with 14-inch guns built. They'd have all been armored 16s. Or at least 15-inch. Let's remember, why was Abandoned Office sounded? Because the internet kept dying out there. And I'm only keeping the internet going at the moment by literally sitting next to the router and staring at it. So I've had to move up to what is actually technically my mum's office. Definitely, expanding on 4C, when did Admiral Phillips die and might he not have survived? He might have survived, but he seems to have gone down with Prince of Wales. So he probably died during some of the attacks on her. Desert Fox, could the more modernised HMS Renown have saved herself if she replaces Repulse in the Far East? What would the effect of losing Renown over Repulse be for the British? Renown would have been actually a greater loss than Repulse because she was modernised. But they're about the same in terms of massive and strategic value, probably. Could she have saved herself? Possibly. She has a better AA fit by that point. But honestly, Repulse does everything right. Honestly, Repulse darts around like anything. It's like... she's just amazing what she does. Dr. Clarke, is this the 60-second warning? Not quite. Not quite. I have 52% battery remaining. As I said, 9:15. I will probably call it up. Hello, Yickers. Nice, interesting. Is that as well lights are down to keep us seeing all the lovely wall dressings? No, as I explained earlier, it's because of my mum's. My mum doesn't like the wallpaper in here. In fact, it's on the list of things I'm supposed to replace at some point when I'm no longer spending my free time arguing with BT, EDF, and British Gas. Scott, does Chamberlain get a rough deal from modern historians? While he made mistakes, he knew what was coming and was massively rearming while saying peace for our time after Munich. Yes and no. I think he gets compared a lot because of... well, one of the points I find most funny in modern politics is actually it almost seems to be that calling your opponent a liar doesn't work anymore because people expect politicians to lie. So they go, yeah, tell us something we don't know. We vote for them anyway. Which is kind of an interesting scenario. And I think for the joy that is Neville Chamberlain, I think the trouble is for him is he stands in such contrast to Churchill, in that he seems quite so unsure of himself. Whereas Churchill is always sure of himself. Even when he's wrong, he's sure of himself. And you need that sometimes. You do need that sometimes. Honestly, if you go back to Lloyd George is a very smart guy, but he doesn't get things right all the time. But he's always sure of himself. Ooh, cool vintage car history. in winter. Evening. Hope you had a good Xmas. I did have a good Xmas. BT did not have a good Xmas, but we'll leave that to one side. Says Fox, say if all the naval powers are allowed to keep 4 battle cruisers during the treaties, does the RN keep 2 of the coal-fired ships or build 2 new renowned style battle cruisers? Well, they already have Hood, and that's a battle cruiser. So they'd either finish off with one of the G3s, which they've started, or keep they'll probably finish off one of the G3s. That would probably be it. And that could then lead to an interesting thing, because if you're finishing off one G3, you might as well finish off the other 2 instead of Courageous and Glorious as aircraft carriers, because you can basically build them from the engine level up as aircraft carriers, and that makes a very big difference to their design versus Courageous and Glorious. And they come out bigger. They will come out as much bigger ships. Beamier and long lengthwise. Given the harsh realities of the UK interwar UK economy. The UK interwar economy is not actually that bad. Again, as I've sometimes get into trouble, but try and explain. You have to remember that governments chose how much they were going to repay their debt. They did choose, and they had more money there if they wanted to. The defence budget is never massive, and it wouldn't have taken much more to have done a little bit more. So they could have afforded it to it. Even with all the other stuff that happens, they could have afforded it. It's great for signal-wise sitting here, but it's absolutely, yeah. It's not supposed to happen. I just don't think this particular system from BT is built to expect the deal of work we put on it. Dan Freeman, I changed my opinion of Chamberlain after reading a book by Alan Alport. I now dislike him more, but for different reasons. Sam Thompson, Type 83 names. Renown, Repulse, Henderson, Duke of Edinburgh. And KGB? King George VI? I think King George VI is being given to a... it's being given to an SSBN, along with Warspite. But I do like those names. Mitchell, all powers allowed to keep 4 battle cruisers. USN finishes off the 4 Lexingtons. Lord help us all. That would be quite fun. Again, though, that means what do the Americans complete as their converted carrier? And the odds are it's the Montanas. Or the Colorado. I'm just thinking of a Washington-class converted to an aircraft carrier. Could be interesting. Could be really interesting. I'm not sure how the bitrate is dropping off, seeing as this thing is literally connected directly into the hub. Just don't know. Ah, well. That Chamberlain was amazingly arrogant and cannot see someone else having a different point of view. He held most people in contempt, which was not necessarily justified. He certainly wasn't good at listening to other people. So when our router kept crashing, we called Bell and they asked what we were using and explained X amount of dollars and we got a larger router to cope. Might be worth looking into. I think I'm going to have to. And for a small upcharge, BT will provide a more capable router. Technically, theoretically, this is supposed to be the best they have, but I doubt it. Dashamak, no, probably the last two Lexington hulls since they would lay down 6. Oh, that could be possible. That would have been quite cool, actually. Because if you think about it, then the Americans end up with a fast squadron based on 2 carriers and 4 battle cruisers. And if you think about that in World War II, well, the Lexingtons matching up against the Congos would be interesting, but they could do it. If the Congos were the carrier escorts, depends. Could be the Imagi. It is Peter Dawson. It is supposed to be the top of the range Ethernet for the from BT anyway. This look, if I have not broken free and not have broken free after World War I or accepted the Dominion proposal, what would the effect of the coastal island have on RAF and Royal Navy? Does Dublin or Waterford have use? Waterford has a lot of use. Dublin, I'm not so sure. But if the Irish are in it, then that's a huge resource. If they're part of the, let's say they're part of the Commonwealth. Let's say they've gone Dominion status, and they do join the war effort. Even more than the Irish people already do in terms of joining up with the British to fight the Germans, because there were quite a lot of them who did that. And there were also a fair number of them who joined up the Americans to fight the Germans and the Japanese. Let's say they join. You've got that much further on your range of your aircraft for air support, but also, if you think about it, you've got a whole load more space, which is theoretically beyond the range of enemy strike aircraft, because whilst they can get there, in reality, to get there, they have to fly all the way across through the British Air Defence Network and then back from the British Air Defence Network, which is very close to Britain. So it's going to sound strange, but you could use it as an aircraft store. If you think about it, if you want to have your pilot training, etc., in a nice space place, you can have them training in Ireland, and they're not that far away. You can shuttle them straight across. Chamberlain also worked hard behind the scenes to get Churchill the support he needed. Yeah, he did become quite a good support for Churchill. Let's see, what if the Channel Dash ends in disaster? Then Hitler gets really, really annoyed. But also, if you've only got the Tirpitz to worry about as a single battleship, you probably, the scale of British forces which need to be deployed to maintain strength against vis-a-vis protection of the convoys goes down. So you could well see a larger Pacific Fleet or Eastern Fleet earlier. Shomak, I have to admit, there is one part of me which just would like to see a Montana to become an aircraft carrier. I just think it'd be funny. Cameron, if Dreadnought are being built with triple turrets on the centre line with twins on the side, would we see triples as a standard, or do not all navies have the necessary tech base? We would probably see triples as the standard eventually. The first generation after with Dreadnought would probably still be doubles dominated, but after that they'd be trebles. That's good. Hopefully. Might end up having to do that. The office is hardlined, and the electrician put in the hard line, and it's all protected cable. So we'll see. They're going to come check it in January. You can get a better separate router of the BT hub. Just set up as a modem and your network hub. Sure, it also means that someone would have to face some Irish divisions, which doesn't sound like it'd be that fun to face. Yeah, it would kind of change the scenario vis-a-vis. Well, let's put it this way: if the Irish divisions might well have still been free and in Ireland to be deployed rapidly to Norway, rather than being in France, in which case you could have had. Ireland could probably put together two decent divisions, and if 2 extra divisions of Allied troops, especially Irish troops, turn up in Norway, that's not good for the German attacks in Norway. Which Montana? The First World War era ones. And interactions. I know there wasn't much of a mothball fleet to scrap in the 30s, but assuming war was known to be a strong possibility in the early 30s, could the government to keep the scrap, could they have offered the merchant fleet companies a deal to incentivize modernise their fleet so as to keep the welders' torches off potential escort hulls? They had many ways of delaying the scrapping of ships without even needing to go that far. There's all sorts of paperwork which has to be done for scrapping a ship. It can take a long time. And Robiti, yeah. Yeah, they're called the South Dakotas in the 1920 design, and I always call them the Montanas because their planned names were South Dakota, Indiana, Montana, North Carolina, Iowa, and Massachusetts. South Dakota was at 38.5%, Indiana was 34.7%, Montana was 27.6%, North Carolina was 36.7%, and North Carolina would have been BB-52. BB-52. Just saying. North Carolina, BB-52. And Iowa was at 31.8% when she was scrapped, and Massachusetts was 11% when she was scrapped. Interesting enough, Iowa Iowa and Massachusetts weren't scrapped till the 8th of November 1923, but South Dakota and all the others were sold for scrapped on the 25th of October 1923. Indiana was scrapped on the slipway. I think it's a sad thing because I rather like the design of them. And I also think a battleship with 4 treble 16-inch guns would have been quite gorgeous to have in service in World War II. Especially as they were designed with a top speed of 23 knots, so they'd have been absolutely dominant of anything they actually managed to catch. Yeah. Yeah, I could get killed for that one. That's right, Dr. Clarke, did you mean one of the 1920 South Dakota Senators under one of the Lexingtons being converted into a carrier? Yes. I tend to call them the Montanas, but don't ask me why. It's just one of the things I say. That's good. I'm not sure the Irish weather is particularly conducive to effective pilot training in the 20th, 30s, and 40s. 3 months of winter followed by 9 months of bad weather. That's fine. It's still better than them having to deal with Luftwaffe coming to shoot them. So, Johnson, the Kriegsmarine dragged their heels with Bismarck until Scharnhorst and Eisenhower return. The 3 of them, plus Prince Eugen, leave together. How does the Iron deal with such a force? If such a force is heading out together, then you won't get Pennypacket's pair of ships. The Royal Navy won't be sending pairs. They're sending two battleships together to deal with one. If the Germans are forming up that kind of fleet, you're probably looking King George V, Rodney, probably Renown. They'll do an all-arms call-in. It'll be like Bismarck when she was out after she sunk Hood. Everything the Royal Navy could get their hands on would be called in. It would be carriers, the lot, a mass task force. The Germans would just... They end up going down hard, but they go down. Sindish Kaiser, is there something about the British species that makes them great historians? Not particularly. Each group, everyone has their own ability with history, but it's in the case of naval historians, it usually seems to be ones with beards are best. We'll leave that to one side. Ian Winter, if the US and the Royal Navy built some of the 20 ships, how would the Japanese ships have measured up to them? The Japanese ships would have been in problems. If the Royal Navy build the G3s that are on the Japanese and the Americans have problems. If the Royal Navies build the G3s and some variation of the M3s, then everyone's in a lot of trouble. That's good. I was thinking more in comparison to the Canadian prairies. The Canadian prairies were great, and they used them for training as much as they could. But remember, there's a lot of distance, and also the thing is, the Canadian prairies, the pilots have to be got over by ship. The people have to be taken over by ship, and then they brought back by ship. Whereas, let's be honest, to Ireland, you can load up a Lancaster with 30, 40 people, fly them over there, get them trained, and bring them back. It's far in. There is logistical reasons, which is, while yes, it's not as weather nice as Canadian prairies, it makes a lot more easy sense. Gene Ham, American newspapers at the time of the construction mentioned conversion of USS Colorado to carrier. Yeah. I think that would have been sad. Mission notes. Wargaming quite irritated me. When they added the 1920 South Dakotas to World Warships, they gave them the wrong guns. Sad times. I'm slightly over time, and I know it because I'm getting messages. In that situation, does Bismarck still kill Hood? Probably not, because, and this is going to sound strange, in a scenario where you have King George V, Rodney, Hood, and Prince of Wales, and probably Renown, and quite possibly some other ships as well, all formed up, you are going to probably have a carrier strike, at least one, if not two, carriers providing strikes going in. You're probably going to have destroyers turning up, because, again, remember part of the all-arms call? The tribals come flinging from all over the fricking place. So once you have that turn up, you have pretty much a full-on battle. You do not have a solo scenario where they're, oh, let's engage Hood. If anything, they probably end up with a lot of problems. Thank you, sister. What? You took me in the dark.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I don't think that was a not so subtle reminder of timings.
Oh, it was just me being an e-poll lawyer.
Okay.
Right.
Right next to the router. It's the only place I could actually get signal.
BT, happy Christmas.
Yes. My command, Duxie, Merry Cranky Juniors. Thank you for the stream. This distracted me from losing one of our cats yesterday. It's cheering me up, Nolan. Thank you so much. Well, that's a pleasure. And I'm sorry you lost a cat. Losing pets, I tried explaining this once to someone, and they didn't understand losing animals. Trying to explain that losing an animal is like losing a member of your family doesn't. Some people don't understand it, but let's put it this way, there are a few moments which I will forever be able to close my eyes and remember. And one of those is our previous fluffy research assistant, a lovely black poodle called Mozart. And he had epilepsy, and we got him through 3 years of having epilepsy, and the vet didn't think he would last 6 months, but we got him through 3 years. And in the end, he got in a fit he couldn't come out from. And he ended up having to be put down. And we didn't realize he was going to have to be put down. And so I'd gone with him. Me and my sister gone with him. And I ended up having to sit down, not because my mum wasn't there. My mum had always seen off the dogs before then, but she thought he was coming home. We'd all hoped the vets could do something to get him out, but they couldn't. And yeah. And that's a big loss. Because you've seen how I am with my dogs. They are my fluffy research assistants. I talk to them more than I talk to humans some days. And yeah, they're a big part. So I'm very sorry you lost your cat. It's a big loss. Bam. I'll venture a question. If the IJ and IGA had got on a bit better, how would it have affected their war plans, war effort? Well, let's put it this way. If they managed to get on well enough that they could actually, standardize things between them in terms of guns and aircraft and those sort of scenarios, so that instead of having multiple production lines, they could have had, one production line of this and that and the other. They could have got far, far more stuff done. If they'd actually shared accurate information, they could have got far more stuff done. No, Scott, I can definitely see the benefits of training in Ireland. Don't get me wrong. I just think there might have been a lot of trainees that are being lost and injured from accidents. Yeah. So the Germans lose Bismarck, Scharnhorst, Eisenhower, and Prince Jürgen. Yes, because the Royal Navy turns up with everything and the kitchen sink, and probably a fair number of those kitchen sinks. Nice. I require imagery of said wall coverings. Said Fox, the Bomb Tank Museum has come out in support of media and anime depictions of tanks, even if they're unrealistic, to create interest and bring people in. Do you think this applies to naval history? Yes. I like anything which gets people interested in naval history. That's why I do all the stuff I do. That's good. But I definitely agree that coming across wind and rain on a training flight is a lot more forgiving than coming across Hans and the Fritz. Yes. Sometimes I'm sure they will, though. At the moment, we're all having currently a feud with BT. And reading. Yes, on losing bets. They are family. Best wishes, Dr. Clarke, and all in the chat this unboxing. Thank you. I think if you're talking about the fit, it had to be injected. He couldn't take anything orally by that point. He was a good fluff. Nighthorn Productions. Nighthorn Productions. On May the 23rd, 24th, 1941, Norfolk and Suffolk maintained contact with Bismarck. As a consequence, Holland manages to cross the T on Lütjens before the Germans can take steps to avoid it. What changes in anything? Probably not much. The only thing I can think of that might change is that they could well have their destroyers with them. And if they have the destroyers with them and expect a Bismarck to be also dealing with a destroyer attack. So that would complicate things for the Bismarck quite a bit. If they've got a destroyer strike, and they've got the cruisers probably holding off at range, and I'm now down to 28% power. So I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to finish this about 9:30. A little bit later than I said I was, but I'll finish it about then. So about 5-10 minute warning. If they've got destroyers coming in, firing their guns and their torpedoes, and probably providing quite a heavy distraction, because let's put it this way. If you're a battleship engaging another battleship and you're blasting away merrily, that's one target, and you're factoring in their guns. But if you've got a battleship, a battlecruiser engaging you, and you're a cruiser and a battleship, and then you've also got two cruisers engaging you, and they're imagining to engage the cruiser to keep that one busy, and then you've got a flotilla of destroyers rushing in and launching their weapons, then you've got gradually more and more stuff coming in and absorbing your attention, and something usually gets through. Something does get through. I was curious as to what anti-seizure meds he was given. We tried about 5 or 6 different variations of medications he was on, but he did well on them. We had a very, very good vet. Still have a very good vet. He's technically retired, but always seems to turn up whenever our dogs are really in trouble because it will still go to the same veterinary surgery. So anyway, I originally got into naval history because I found Drag Channel and needed something interesting to fall asleep to. And Warhammer got stale. Desert Fox. How did the age of sail and infrastructure translate to steam and steel? How easily did shipyards change materials, and how were the requirements different between the ages? Well, it's a slow transition for starters. You have to remember it goes from wooden production, wooden ships, to wooden ships with copper bottoms. Then wooden ships with increasingly large cooking furnaces on them. And then increasingly big guns, which require some metalworking and skills and knowledge to put together. And those come from various facilities, but they're different, but they are connected to the shipyards in some respects. And then it becomes ironclad. You sort of get steam engines starting to come in. They come from boilermakers that are put in, but they're put in wooden ships. And then you get this sort of ironclad where you've got the wooden frame and the irons put on the outside. And then they slowly come with the you slowly get a process of construction which eventually ends in what you do. But you're talking about a good 50, 60 years of transition. Arguably longer than that on some respects. Which means that they adapt, but they adapt slowly, and there are some yards which just fall out of use. Woolwich is a yard which falls out of use. Because they just can't deal with the changes and the different sizes of ships. Peter Dawson, so he's a veteran. Yeah. Our vet's a very, very experienced vet. And I know you mean that as a joke, Peter Dawson, but he is really experienced. Really good vet. Right then. And it. Yeah, that was a 24% battery remaining. So. I have apparently managed to do 3 hours of broadcasting this evening. I'm not sure if it actually has been 3 hours of broadcasting. I doubt it has been 3 hours of broadcasting. I think once it's all put together, it'll be a lot less than 3 hours of broadcasting. Thank you, Stefan. Stramanger, hello. Dr. Clarke, have you done anything on the IGN 2nd Special Squadron in the Mediterranean, World War I? You have a lot of videos to check. Not yet. They are on my list of things to talk about, but I talked about them a bit, but not much. I talked about it in the beginning of my Anglo-Japanese relations. I talked about a bit in that, but I've decided to expand that video series dramatically. So I'm going to go back and restart that and turn that from a 3-parter into a 8-parter. Scott, without the naval treaties, what do you think battleship designs would have been by 1939? Is the Yamato a good basis to go on? I honestly think Yamato is not a good basis to go on, and I have a reason for this. Because Yamato is built with the infrastructure limitations of the previous generations of battleships. So she's the maximum you could build on World War I really era infrastructure. Whereas I'm fairly certain and definitely the British were considering this. The British were thinking they were building the G3s and the M3s, and then they were thinking they were going to have to take a break and actually rebuild infrastructure to be able to take ships larger. And that was their plan. It was going to be larger infrastructure. And I think you could... Ultimate Adrenauts has something which is they call super battleships, which you can usually get up to somewhere not far off 100,000 tons. And I wouldn't be surprised if you were talking about battleships getting up to that range. I could certainly see them getting up to that range. I could especially see something going around with 12, 18-inch guns. There's a Vox. Is there a steam and steel fleet worse than the 2nd Pacific Squadron of the Russo-Japanese War? Various points, the Ottoman Navy certainly does its best to be worse than the 2nd Pacific Squadron. There have been units of the Royal Navy which occasionally I would question the sanity of. The US Navy at certain points before they really start to get funding, especially the stuff which brings in the Great White Fleet, etc. Basically, the US Navy before Roosevelt got involved had some issues. But no, that has very specific issues. Right then, battery saver has started because it's got so low, so I better go. Right then, thank you everyone. Right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being on here. Thank you, Phil Williams. Thank you, Strap Hangman. Thank you, Melly1640. Thank you, Knight6831. Thank you, Michael Patton. And thank you, Gary Salsky. Thank you, DG40. Thank you, Stafford. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Sean Mack. Thank you, Colin Cameron. Thank you, Dan, Stafford, and Sean for doing the admin jobs. Thank you. Thank you, Phil Williams. Thank you, M35 Benvids. Thank you, Melly1640, Jess P. Thank you, everyone, basically. I better go quickly before it dies completely. Night Heron Productions, thank you. Mitchell Oates, thank you. Paul from Chicago, thank you. Desert Foxo, thank you, of course. And GD Hellman, thank you. And Vintage Car High Street, thank you. And I think Sal Mercalango was on here earlier as well. And Peter Dawson, and basically everyone who's on here. Thank you for watching. Sorry this has been so quick. But hope you have a nice time. Hope you're having fun. And there is another recorded video to come out tomorrow. And I'll be recording another video at some point tomorrow that will hopefully come out on Tuesday. Take care, everyone. Have fun and enjoy yourselves. Thank you, Martina Henry. Thank you, HMS Ford. Thank you, Pabaxi. Thank you, Sean V. Thank you, Abazatsuki. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ian Winter. Thank you. Ba-da. Ba. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Ba-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da.